This is everything you need to know to dial in your settings to get beautiful videos straight from your iPhone. So let's find our settings, and if it isn't on your main page, you can swipe down and search for it. Once this is open, let's scroll down and find the camera tab. And if you can't find that, just scroll to the top and search for camera. We're gonna work our way down the list, starting with camera control. Camera control is a new button on the side of the iPhone 16 and 16 Pros. When you press this button, it quickly launches the camera, and you can swipe on this button, kind of like a trackpad, and you can change some of the settings for your camera. If you have clean preview enabled, when you're using the camera control button, all of the other settings on your screen are going to disappear. This is up to you whether you want all of your settings to disappear, so I'm gonna leave this on. If you wanna launch your camera quickly from your lock screen, all you need to do is press the camera control button on the side of your phone, but if you find you're accidentally pressing this, you can have this enabled to double press the button to pull up the camera. So this is the menu where you would change if you want that enabled or not. Below that, we've got the options of what is going to pull up when we press the camera control button, and because we're shooting videos, let's have this open the camera. Let's go back a screen, and the next option is photographic styles, and these apply only to photos, so we're not gonna talk about those in this video. The next option is record video. There's a lot of options here, but to get the most cinematic videos, I like to choose 4K, 24 frames per second. 4K is the highest resolution of video that our iPhones are going to give us, and it's also going to give us a sharper picture. But in turn, it's also going to take up more space. Lower resolutions like 1080 and 720 are going to take up less space, but if you're looking for the most cinematic and beautiful videos, let's leave this in 4K. If we scroll down, we'll see the option for PAL. PAL is used in different countries other than North America. So if you're living in North America, let's leave this turned off. If you're living elsewhere in the world, there's a good chance you'll need to turn this on. Our next option is enhanced stabilization, and we are going to want to leave this on. By leaving this on, we're gonna smooth out the footage that we're capturing handheld, and it's gonna reduce the need for a gimbal or a stabilizer to get steady footage. By doing this, your image is going to be cropped in a slight amount, but that is the phone stabilizing your image. So just leave this on. Action mode, lower light, let's leave this on. You're gonna get a cleaner image when you're using action mode and there's not enough light, and it's gonna reduce the stabilization of your video a little bit, but let's go for a cleaner image versus a more stable image. Now, I like to leave HDR video off. HDR is great if you're viewing what you've shot on an iPhone, but it's annoying if you wanna send this to a different type of phone or to a computer. The image can get a little wonky and confusing, and it's much easier to just leave the setting off and have your videos compatible on all devices. For auto FPS, let's leave this in auto 30 and 60 frames per second. Now for lock cameras, this one is gonna be up to you. If you're somebody who likes to change your focal length while you're shooting, like zooming from wide to tight while you're recording a video, you're gonna wanna leave this off. But if you set the focal length that you wanna be shooting on and you don't wanna accidentally change the focal length while you're shooting, make sure to leave this on. So for lock white balance, this is also a tricky one to know whether you turn it on or off. A lot of the times I'm okay with the phone choosing the white balance in the scene, like when I go from inside a building to outside a building. But if I'm filming something in a controlled environment, kind of like this, and the sun goes behind a cloud, the phone is gonna try to compensate and change the white balance. So in general, I'd try to leave this on. I think it gets you more cinematic, beautiful videos. So let's go back and then into the next menu, slow motion. With the iPhone 16 Pros, we now have the option to shoot in 4K 120 frames per second, which is actually crazy. The great thing about recording in this format is that we can change how slow we want our video afterwards, as well as having our videos recorded at the highest resolution. So I would recommend keeping on 4K 120 frames per second. However, keep in mind that these files are going to be massive and use this feature sparingly. Let's go back to the previous menu, and now we're looking at cinematic. Let's leave cinematic at 4K 24 frames per second. 24 frames per second is the most cinematic, and even though I don't really recommend this feature, if you do happen to shoot in it, let's leave it at 4K 24. Moving on, the next option is record sound. And again, with the iPhone 16 lineup now, there's an option to record spatial audio. The great thing about this is that there's now 4 microphones on the newer iPhones, and they can record pretty incredible audio straight from our phones. But for the meantime, let's just leave this on spatial audio. Below that, there is the option for allow audio playback. And if you have this enabled, you can take a video or a photo, and if you're playing music at the same time, that audio is not going to be paused. And to ensure we get the best sound, let's leave on wind noise reduction. The next menu we're looking at is formats. The first few options in this menu are actually for photos, so let's skip those and go to video capture. Let's make sure that Apple ProRes is turned on because this is the format that we can use when shooting video on our phone to make sure we get the highest quality video possible. As for ProRes recording, let's make sure that log is turned on and not HDR. Let's go back to our main screen of our settings and choose preserve settings. So when you're shooting video in your iPhone camera and you close the camera and reopen it, some of your settings may disappear. If you don't want those settings to disappear, this is the menu where you can choose which settings you would like enabled every time you open your camera. I'll show you which ones I have enabled, but pick and choose the ones that work best for you. Once you figure out what settings you want turned on or off, let's enable grid and level to get the straightest videos possible. I'm gonna leave off mirror front camera because honestly, I'm not even really using the front camera on my phone. And view outside the frame is just for photo, I believe, so don't worry about this right now. Make sure you have lens correction turned on so there's no distortion or vignetting when you're shooting your video, and leave on macro control so you can place your phone as close as you want to objects and make sure that it catches focus. So that's most of the heavy lifting of what settings we're gonna be changing. So let's jump over to the camera app, and just a reminder, we're gonna be using Apple's built-in camera app. No fancy apps, at least not today. Now, before you even open your camera on your iPhone, let's clean the lenses on the phone. These lenses get really dirty from having them in our pockets and accidentally touching them with our hands, so just wipe this with the side of a shirt. This is really important for getting crisp photos and videos. Also, if you're planning to film yourself, let's try to avoid using the selfie camera. I know it's tempting because you can see what you're filming, but the front camera on your iPhone is actually the lowest quality. So when we're choosing which mode to shoot video in on our iPhones, let's choose video, not cinematic, not slow motion. Those are topics for another video, but for today, let's just use video. We've got a whole bunch of options on our phones that we can shoot video on, but I generally try to shoot as much as I can on the 1x lens. The 1x lens is the sharpest, and it actually lets the most light into our lens, and you're gonna get the best images with this lens. It's not bad to use the other lenses, but use them in the appropriate situations. So once we found a subject that we wanna shoot, we're gonna tap on our subject to focus. And if you want your whole image brighter or darker, we're gonna change the exposure, and you do that by dragging up and down on your screen. Now let's say you wanna lock focus on an object in your screen. You're gonna press and hold on that object, and you're gonna see this little animation, and that means that you have locked your focus. This also means that you have locked your exposure, how bright or dark your image is, and that your white balance is also going to be locked. So that's kind of the basics for shooting, but there are a few settings in this app, and we can change those by pressing this little arrow at the top. A menu pops up at the bottom. In here, we can choose whether we want a flash, which is just the flashlight on your phone turning on or off. It's not my favorite. It is a directional light straight at your subject. I prefer my light coming from the side, but in some cases, this is very handy. Next is the option to change the exposure of your entire frame. So once you press this, you can drag left and right and make your whole image lighter or darker. I generally like to drop mine to 0.3 or 0.7. I feel like the iPhone likes to overexpose images, but this is personal preference. The next option is whether you want to shoot in ProRes log or not. And the next option is shared libraries, but also a different topic for a different video. The final option is action mode, and this is a great tool if you are running, trying to capture something, or shooting something that is high action. Your phone will actually crop into the image that it's shooting and decrease the resolution in exchange for having higher stabilization. This is something you need to play around with, and the results are really incredible. So up at the top of the screen is some of the same options for video settings. This is just quick access to them. Now, the only one we didn't talk about is resolution and frame rate. I do suggest you shoot at 4K, 24 frames per second, but if for whatever reason you want to change your resolution or your frame rate, you just tap on it up here. Now, we didn't touch on ProRes log, but I did say this is the best way to get the highest quality video straight from your iPhone. It's a complicated topic that Apple has actually simplified quite a bit, but it's a topic for another day. I think the only other thing we didn't touch on here is macro. So if a subject is very close to your lens, your camera's gonna switch over into macro mode. And you may want this, you may not, but you have the option whether to turn it on or off with this button right here. Now that your settings are locked in, I'm sure you're itching to go out and take some incredible videos. Thanks for watching. My name's Davey, and if you want more shooting tips or iPhone settings or iPhone videos or even videos on productivity, there's plenty more of those on my channel. Thanks again, and we'll see you in the next one.